Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDavitt. This is the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. We are mere days away from Christmas, and it brings me back in my mind to the time when I was a little guy and couldn't wait to open up the gifts under the tree. The gifts that really made me flip my lid were Star Wars related toys, action figures, spaceships, an 18-inch tall H.R. Giger alien, maybe the ship from Space 1999, or some wacky magnetic action figures called Micronauts. Look them up. They're pretty old. It was cool stuff. Well, today's guest is involved heavily in the toy world. He's a toy designer and an inventor and a sculptor, and he is a costume maker, and he makes bronzes for private collectors, as well as working in stop motion animation as a teacher, and he's working on a film as I speak right now. And Dino Crisanti is a pretty amazing guy. He is what you would call a Renaissance man. And I think if Dino could be alive during the Renaissance, if he could have lived at that time, he would have fit right in and he would have been absolutely thrilled. What a cool guy. We worked together on and off on projects, or at least under the same studio when I was freelancing in the toy design industry. And Dino is a really cool guy. He's a hard worker, very positive, very funny. It was really cool to reconnect with him. So I encourage you to listen to this guy's story, listen to how hard he works and how he approaches the business of being an artist in the toy design world and just an artist in general as an instructor, and then as he's working on this film. All right. Hey, Dino, welcome to the show.
How you doing?
I'm doing
Thanks
good,
for inviting
man.
me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you being here. You rock. Like, you are a kind of an under the radar superstar. Can you tell everybody what it is that you do?
I constantly work too much. My family would attest to that. But I work. My day job is at Big Monster Toys. I'm a toy inventor. I've been doing that for 25 years. And I'm also a teacher at Columbia College in Chicago. I teach stop motion animation, and I also teach a maquettes course. Then I have my side business, which is sculpting, and I do tiny sculptures, monumental size sculptures done in bronze or almost anything. And then I also, for my free time, since I do so much creative stuff, I create more. And my brother Mark and I are in the middle of a film called Fox in the Shadow. We've been working on it for 2 years. It's all stop motion. So anytime I'm not sleeping, I'm usually creating. So that's who I am. And I really need to slow down sometime and smell the roses, but I just get nervous, and I'd rather just be creating. I want to be a maker, not a taker, as I've said before. So if I'm making something, I'm the happiest I can be. So that's who I am. And I've been very lucky to be able to do these careers. I went to Columbia College, and I graduated way back when. And when I got out of college, I started working in some studios. I had a regular job, a mundane job of working at a shipping department at an art store called Favor Rule. And I was trying to do freelance, but it was really tough to go with real work and freelance. So I just said, you know what? I'm gonna cut the strings and go full freelance. So I started working at Sinnott and Associates, painting cells and doing in-betweening. So I got a lot of work doing, 2D animation, which was not one of my strengths, but I did it anyway. Then I started doing some prop construction here and there, and then finally met two people who gave me my first break in stop motion, and that was Animator Productions. They used to do the Hamburger Helping Hand, if you remember back in the day when it was still stop motion. And that was Paul Jessel and Marie Sinkner, and they're two absolutely wonderfully talented people. They're out in California now, but they used to be on the north side of Chicago, and I was a big burly guy, and they were two little magical creative elves that couldn't carry equipment, so they hired this hulking beast to carry their big tables and their camera equipment. And I was kind of starting as a pack animal, but then I ended up doing camera assisting and lighting and working their early motion control system. So that was my first break in stop motion, and I learned so much from them. And Paul's actually animated on James and the Giant Peach and Nightmare Before Christmas, and a bunch of things. So very, very talented people. His wife, Marie, was an amazing artist and chemist. She made everything, all the cast foam puppets, and she was just incredible. So I learned so much from those two. And then after they moved to California, I ended up working for a couple more studios, smaller studios, doing stop motion. So I did that for about a decade. And I ended up doing a lot of corporate videos and a lot of commercial work for a local place called Their TV. They were on Grand Avenue. And then suddenly it dried up. There was a recession, and there was just no animation anywhere. But then my friend Alan Ozark, who was working in the toy design industry already, and I never understood how he could do that and come up with ideas all the time. So because the animation dried up, I said, you know what I'll do is I'll give it a try. And he says, you just show up and just show your stuff and try to get hired. So I made a portfolio. I've never done toy design. I really was more of a sculptor, and I'm mold maker and that sort of thing. And so I just showed up with a crazy portfolio, and after 3 interviews, they ended up hiring me. And the reason they hired me was this miniature, I wish I brought it with me, but I have this miniature sculpture of a Dungeon and Dragons not action figure, but like little lead figure. It was just this dwarf holding an axe. It was miniature. And I just pulled it out just by accident almost. And that's what got me hired, because they were working on a toy called Mighty Max, and this was in the 90s. And everything was miniature, and there was mold making. And when I pulled that thing out, they said, let's hire him, because they see I could do that. So that's when I started at Big Monster Toys. At the time, it was BMT and Associates. And that's where I met Dave Link. He was another sculptor who you know, of course. And I had never done this, so I kind of started off as just a sculptor. And then as it went along, I started doing more and more and coming up with ideas. And you have to change, you have to constantly change who you are when you're working in any situation, because the more you know, the more hireable you'll be. So because of my background, because when I was young, I made something every day probably. Like when I was 5, I got my first sculpting tool, which I still have, and my brother Paul gave it to me. And I remember being in like kindergarten, and all the kids were like just making balls and squares, and here I'm working on like a triceratops. It probably was horrible, but I was really young, but still kind of had this idea of form and stuff like that. And it was because of my brother Paul, and he influenced my brother Mark and I to be artists. I think that's how I feel about it. So sculpting, making, I used to make movies when I was young in grammar school, and I tried animation way back then. So I'm always making things, but I wanted to make costumes, and I asked my mother to make a costume, and she wouldn't do what I had to sew it this way. And so I taught myself to sew, and I taught myself to sculpt. I never had like a formal education, but when I needed something, I would just learn how to do it.
So what do you think made you such a self-starter? I mean, you're really driven.
I think it's my superpower of having OCD, and I've tapped into this nervous, manic energy, and because I was glued to the TV when I was young for watching like old films like Jason and the Argonauts, all the Ray
Yeah.
Harryhausen stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And seeing those monsters, I was so fascinated with how it was made. I just got drawn into it. And I've always loved animals and creatures, and I don't know. I've never really thought about it that deeply, but it's like if I see something, I don't go, I want that. I go, oh, I could make that, or I can make it a different way. So it's almost like a challenge. I challenge myself. I think that's probably what it is.
Yeah. So tell me, there's people who when they're little they love this stuff. You know, I'm a Ray Harryhausen guy, and
Mm.
I'm a practical effects monster guy. I love all that stuff. I love creatures, and um, I had a really supportive system around me. It sounds like you did too. Like, what was it like growing up being you, and what made you think you could make this stuff?
You know what's strange? If I start to kind of analyze our family, there's 6 kids. 3 of the 6 are creatives. My father was a truck driver. My mother was a stayed at home and took care of the house, but she was really into decorating and all that. So my father, I don't think he ever drew a straight line in his life, but he was a great guy, and he was very funny, and he could tell stories and all that. I'm not sure if he ever really understood the fact that we were going to be artists and be able to make money at it. He'd always be encouraging, but he would always say, have a fallback plan. You better have a fallback plan. And my brother Mark and I, we have this Crisanti work ethic, and we always have a job, and we always work as hard as possible. Even like as a busboy, I just worked and worked and worked. And I became a cook and all this other stuff. So it always looked like in my family, I had a fallback plan. I could be all those things, but I kept on pushing and saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And they never were negative, but they were always like, now make sure, now this is fine as a hobby, but can you really make money at it? So, because they never said no, I guess I always thought it was certainly possible. My brother, Paul, who's older than I am, he was like, he was a hippie artist. He had a van painted like with all kinds of crazy characters from the 60s and all this sort of stuff. He taught us how to silkscreen. I remember silkscreening a t-shirt when I was in grade school. So I had these skills that my brother kind of influenced. He gave me a camera. I had clay, so I was doing animation. So there was never a time where we didn't have stuff around the house to start making things. And because Mark and I are close in age, my brother Mark, he's only a year younger, we kind of bounced off each other, all the creativity, when we were getting along. But there was always, when like brothers too. But
So wait, you guys were really close in age. You say you two were a year apart. What about your older brother?
so with our family, there's 6 kids, and there was
Yeah.
3 in the beginning, and then there was
Yeah.
a 10-year gap, and then 3 more. My sister is 5 years older than me. My oldest sister is she's 76 now, and I'm only 57. So
Right. And your older brother, who's the creative.
he's about 10 years older than me as well.
Okay.
And,
And he invited you in though. He was like, yeah, let's do this stuff.
right, and he lived nearby for a while and had a studio where he was doing clay. And at one point, he was up in Carbondale, and he had this shop in Carbondale where it's all handmade gifts and art. And we took a trip up there, and we just see all this craziness and everything. Anything that people would make, they would do carved wood, they would do bronze. Soldering art, just crazy stuff. So I think that we were exposed to so many different types of art, and in a very indirect way. It's not like my parents said, let's go to an art gallery. Because when I was growing up, my kids were growing up and they were very young, my brother Mark and I would bring them to art galleries and art openings every night. Not every night, but every weekend. We would just really just expose them to all this stuff. And my 2 younger daughters are both very artistic, which is exciting. That's the biggest thing is I've created something that now creates. So it's kind of, and they're both super talented, and it's so exciting to see that. But I think it was because of all that influence, and we just made things together. I was teaching my kids to weld when they were like 7 or 8 years old, and that exposure to just possibilities, I think, just helped, give people a way to make things. Like most people, I don't know how to make that. Like I have students now who I said, okay, here's a screw gun. You know, just drill this to this, and they go, I've never used this drill before. I don't know what this is. I've never seen a saw before. And I'm going, are you crazy? Give me your parents' number. I want to call them. I blame your parents. And I just am flummoxed that people don't know what these simplest of tools are, you know. And my daughters were in theater, so they helped build sets, and we were building things when we were younger. So it's all very straightforward for them, and it's very common. And then we, because we're all artists, are artistic, kind of then forget that there are people out there who aren't. You know what I mean? And for a coined phrase of being muggles, there's the muggles of the world who just don't realize that you can make things, and it just boggles my mind. I just like, people will go home and just sit and watch Netflix all day, and they'll do nothing else after they get out of work. How can you do nothing? You know, you should be doing something, making something. It just I don't know. It just, for me, it's really strange to not think about making things, and it's just ingrained in who I am, I think, from the way I grew up and people around me. So,
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I've known you for, it's 25 years now, I think I've known you.
at very least,
I first met you at Toy Fair at Jekyll and Hyde Club in New York City.
wow, yeah, I like that.
Dave brought me there and invited me, and I met you and Alan and a whole bunch of other toy designers, and it was a new world for me.
Right.
And, you know, I'd be working on projects with a mutual friend of ours, and Dino would show up, and he would just get the lowdown on, I want you to block this thing out, or I want you to do some detail here, or whatever it was. And he'd go off in the corner, and he'd just work. And, you know, we'd talk here and there. People are kind of shouting and whatnot, having a conversation back and forth. But Dino's always going. And if you follow him on Instagram, or you see him on Facebook, or you know, you look at his stuff, he's got something new. And, you know, this is enlightening for me, because, as you know, I was saying when we started, it's like, I know you, but I don't know you. Like, you know, we've kind of been brought together by projects.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
and
Our mutual friend is art.
yeah, absolutely. And you know, Dino is, like he said, he's got this animated movie. I want to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But, you know, his journey has been one that is very determined and very proactive. And it's just, I didn't know your childhood. Like, I didn't know that stuff. I didn't know you had like a brother who could almost be an uncle, right? Or like a mentor father figure to bring you along. And then you kind of had your other brother who was right there with you. And I get that, like, the close in age, you guys can be as close as this, and then be wanting to kill each other the next minute. But you had these guys to bounce off of. And I mean, that's really cool. And then your dad added something to the mix, which is powerful, which is encouragement and hope, but mixed with pragmatism, like reality. Hey, look, you can dream and be a dreamer, but you got to make sure it's in the real world somehow, because you got to be able to survive, kid.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's been a major influence in just some of his attitudes, uh, the way he deals with people, and the way he sees how things should be done. We also butted heads quite a bit, but there's a lot of his sayings that I say now to my kids and to my students, and it's very funny to hear them coming out of my mouth. And because I'm starting to look so much like him, I probably looked like for too long. And now that's where we do a split screen and you see a picture of my father. But it really kept me grounded, which was great, because there's always reality when you're doing creative stuff. You have to be clear on how much time you're spending, and what your time is worth. You know, you can't just give away your experience. And that's the hardest part about working as an artist, is coming up with that price. You know what I mean? Figuring out, okay, here's the project. How long is it going to take? What should I charge? Will it run into these walls, and will it make it, you know, harder and all this? That's I don't know single artist who can't figure out, or who doesn't get nervous when they start asking for money. So
how do you figure that out? What's your approach?
well, because I have a particular client that I've been doing work for over and over and over, and he's out in Oak Brook, and it's a place called Bear Manor, and it's a private home, but there are these giant fountains in the front. Those are mine. I can't actually keep track of how many sculptures I've done for him, but there's
And when
probably
you're talking about doing sculptures, like he commissioned you as a fine artist to design and sculpt these bears and whatnot that kind of work out to be very decorative around his home, but they're bronzes.
yeah, they're
So
cast.
it goes through the whole shebang. So yeah, go ahead.
So so we have a real. He almost reminds me of sort of a Renaissance patron, because he's a creative, but he can't make anything, but he's got ideas. And then he's got these ideas that spark, and then he bounces them off people like myself. And actually my friend, Alan Ozark, he does murals for him. And so there's this great sort of relationship where he'll throw an idea out, and then I'll go, what if we did this and what did this? Because he'll give me a small idea, and then I start doing some sketches, and I go, what if it looks like this? And then suddenly it's this giant thing. So for him, we've got a pretty decent relationship, because he knows what stuff will cost, because we've done it for long enough. But what I start to do is, so say if I'm going to do a life-size bear, so I sit there and I do some sketches and I do some drawings, and then I start to look at the process, and then I start to break that process down into time. So I know that I need to make an armature. I know I'm going to have this much steel and weld it for this much time, and then rough out this next stage. So I start to do it in blocks of time. So I just list all my jobs, and not all my jobs, but all the different phases of the project. And then I just sit there and I start to imagine myself doing it. And I'm sure this happens to you too, because I've seen you do beautiful airbrush stuff, and it's like it's just pouring out of you. And all of these images stored in your head, and they just kind of shoot out your arm. But it's kind of the same thing. It's like I have it. I have the project done in my head, but so then I back up, I rewind, and I figure out how long it's going to take for each. So I'll make tick marks in front of this list of everything that I need to do, and that's to keep track of how many hours for each thing. So I go all the way down that list, and then I go over it a couple more times, give it a day just to kind of make sure I've been thinking through it all. Then I'll figure out the supplies, and then I'll think about what's going to be the problem. Where's it going to be a hitch? Where I might add, it's the PETA factor. Have you heard of PETA factor? Pain in the ass.
Help me.
Pain
I've
in the
heard of
ass
it.
factor.
Yes, yes.
So it's like, oh, I can do this. Oh, that's going to be a pain in the ass. Let's add 4 hours. So you always pad it a little bit with those factors. Then I just figure out what I want to make an hour. Like what's my time worth? And what is this client going to be worth? Be able to pay. So I know him, and I know his perceptions of what art costs, and that changes for everybody. Some people will say, I could buy a painting, at Target, and it costs like $40. Why should I pay you $400 for this custom piece? There's just that mindset.
Right.
But then you get people who really know what your time is worth, and they see it as a magical thing, and they will pay the price. So you have to kind of know the client a little bit. So, I'll throw a price per hour, and, $50, $70, $80 an hour. Sometimes if I'm really lucky, it goes a lot lower if I'm not. If it's a small project, I know I can knock out in a few hours, and I just want to make a few $100s, because again, I'm not relying on my freelance money, because I got the full-time gig, which is nice. And I also have school, which is nice. So I have a little bit of a safety net, so I don't have to worry about it too much. It would be a serious difference in the way I price something if I was just doing freelance. So sometimes if I see a project I really like, it might not be, I might not price it over and above. But I still have to respect my time, because this is when I'm doing this, I'm not with my family, and I'm not doing other things. So your time is worth it. And it's not like you're hiring a plumber, although plumbers are very talented. I can't do what they do, but they make whatever they make an hour. But you can't just put a price on a per hour for all the experience you have to make these things. So by you making this stuff and making it over and over, you've gathered up all this experience and these abilities. that has a price. So you have to add that into the final price as well. And then, so I'll look at that final price after it's all added up and go, that's way too low. And I'll just throw some zeros on it, or throw a couple of numbers and move it around and saying, I think he'll go for that. And then away it goes, and you see how they react. And if they balk at it, I say, well, that's what it costs, and if they react too quickly that they'll do it, then I know I didn't charge them enough.
Right. Yeah.
And then I also, when I talk to my clients, and I've had less and less clients, the amount of clients I work for Wagner Foundry. I do a lot of work for them sometimes, where it's monuments and plaques and miniature sculptures and statues, and they know me, and they'll sometimes tip their hat and tell me who these clients are, so I can kind of figure out what kind of price I could give them. So I'm starting to know my clients more, and it makes it a little bit easier. But when you're just meeting somebody, you can kind of talk to them and get to know them just enough so you can start to read the project and read what they're expecting. And I also will I'll try to talk to them and say, okay, so this is a very time-consuming process, and there's the cost of bronze, and there's molding. It's going to take 3 weeks. This is a lot of time. So this is not like going and just buying some pre-existing art. You're getting a custom piece. So you lay that groundwork so that it doesn't hit them so hard when you give them a price. I've done work for the Lincoln Park Zoo and Brookfield Zoo and a couple others. And I did a project for them years and years ago. And they told me when they started that we didn't think we'd be able to get this art done. It's either going to be too expensive or take too long. We never thought it would be both, basically not be both. I did it very quickly, and I did it for a very, very reasonable price because I wanted to get into that. I wanted to get into Brookfield Zoo. I was already at Lincoln Park Zoo, but I wanted this job. So I lowballed it a little bit because it was my first job and it wasn't that much work. So that was great because then I did a bunch of other work for them. And so that's another thing you have to think about is it's not like the first one is free, but if you're very reasonable in the beginning, then they're going to come back to you over and over because they know you can do it quickly and they know you can do it for a decent price. So,
yeah. What you're really talking about is building relationship. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
You want to get a foot in the door, build the relationship, let them know that you're good and reasonable and not a maniac or or anything like that.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes they'll come back for more when it's a big organization like that.
Mm-hmm. I think my first zoo job was with Lincoln Park Zoo, and I just heard through a friend that they were looking for these busts of these great apes. I heard about it, found out the guy's name. I spent an hour sculpting an orangutan bust out of clay, baked it, put it in a box, and sent it to him to introduce myself. And it was the sculpture was all right, but it was I just did this really kind of expressive little bust, sent it to them, and I got the hook in. I got them just because of that. And then that became this bigger project that kept going and going. So sometimes it's a little bit of a show, a little bit of
Sure.
Song and dance.
Did you like explain to them that this is just, hey, I'm just showing you a rough. I'm really interested, and here you go.
I would love to work on this project, is what I said.
Yeah.
Here's just some of my work. This was before I was really, really comfortable with the internet and digital work. Like my first, I didn't know Photoshop at that time. I didn't do any digital sculpting. I didn't do any of that. So it was just this physical thing that I knew I could do. And sending it to the guy, he opened it up, and he's not a sculptor, but he's a primatologist, and he's looking at he looked at it, got super excited because I just sent him this sketch basically, but it was a 3D sketch, and it would be like you mailing something out and it's a beautiful painted card and say, hire me. They'll say, wow, this is beautiful. So it's a little bit of a Hollywood move to kind of hook them in, but I've done that a bunch of times and it's worked. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, if you find something works and then it works again, you're probably onto something.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I've done it enough times to know that it'll work with some clients, certainly.
That's really cool. Do you do that more with like larger organizations or individuals or?
Well, with my client in Oak Park, I do that all the time. I'll do
Sure.
a sketch and do a photo. What I do now, because I now do digital sculpting. I use ZBrush. I will do a digital mock-up and kind of send him a little animation of it going 360, and that just whets his appetite for this bigger project. And as soon as he sees it, his wheels start turning and churning. At one point, he said to me, I want to do this like fire pit over in this area in my home. And it should be about this big, and maybe this little bridge will lead to it. And by the time I got done with it, because I got him super kind of jazzed, it was a castle. It was like a miniature castle with these turrets and 8 bears all the way around it. Because my sketches have bears all over there. Because every time I do a sketch of a little bear, it's more work for me. And then I just start to, it's like encrusted. It's like it's just funny. I don't really feel like I'm manipulating him because he's so excited about it.
Yeah.
And I know how to get him excited about the projects, and he loves doing it. It's a real symbiotic back and forth. So for that guy, I did it for this, a person rather than an organization. When I had more contacts with the zoos lately, it's been kind of tough for the zoos to do anything.
Yeah.
Their budgets have gone down so far.
Way down. Yeah.
Yeah. I had I was supposed to do some penguins. I think it was last year, and I gave them a really decent budget, and I did a little bust, a little sculpture of it, and then it was quiet. They never got back to me just because they just didn't have the money, and it was a strange,
Yeah.
So there, stuff used to come in a lot more, but I think people are a little bit more reserved right now with doing artistic things.
Well, yeah, it's a hard time, right, with them really having to close down, and I guess you can go to the zoo, but you still have social distance. I don't know how many people are really going into buildings with each other and all that.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that I think they're just being cautious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
They just want to hold back a little bit.
how are you using ZBrush for the large sculptures? Are you just using those as visual maquettes?
Yes.
Or are you printing them? Okay, so you're sculpting them large.
What I'm doing, like for the I'm using ZBrush, and I'm also using Rhino, which is a CAD program.
Yeah.
And I am really not an architect, but instead of me sitting here sketching, I can create things in CAD where I can just duplicate things and zip it around and move it around, and then I could bring that into ZBrush and then do a little film showing what it would look like and zooming in. So it's a 3-dimensional model that he can really sink his teeth into. For the bigger sculptures of the characters, I can quickly do a sketch, and I could bring in some pre-existing models of, like, a helmet or something like that, and it's just a quick sketch, and then you can take a look at it. It's not completely replaced sculpting the miniature stuff, but if he calls me and we have a conversation and I have a lunch hour, I'll sit there and do something really fast and then email it to him. And, like, an hour after we've talked, he's looking at something. It keeps the momentum of the project going. But then with the bigger projects, sometimes I want like a pendant or a belt buckle, or an emblem, and then I will digitally sculpt that, print that out 3D, and then stick it on a big clay creature. And then when it gets cast, I've got this, these things, if I need multiples of it. Sometimes it's cheaper than making a mold. I look for ways to save time, because the longer the project takes, the less you make an hour, basically. But I call myself a bit of a lazy creator, and I kind of set aside my ego. Everything doesn't have to be pure and just me, but if I see a buckle, or I see an old pin, or if I see some sort of thing, I'll just stick it on there and incorporate it and blend it in. And now suddenly it's been something else. It's just like found objects. I've been doing that forever. And
well, it's efficient, and you get added value. And if you're not sticking a Mickey Mouse belt buckle on there,
exactly,
you're
like
pretty good.
Right. I had an old meerschaum pipe that I bought. It was like years, and it was a broken thing. But it was probably 60 or 70 years old. And then I just did a bear and I stuck it on there and sculpted the rest of the pipe in a pouch, and that became part of it, you know? So, anything like that, or I found an old set of keys and I put the keys on there and made a ring. And now I've got this extra detail, and when you're doing the kind of bronze sort of paint job, it just looks great. So, did you sculpt all this? Yeah, I basically sculpted all this. Everything? Yeah, well, I kind of have everything. You know, so, you know, but it's like 80% or 90, like 85% me, and then, you know, 15% found objects, because it doesn't make sense to sculpt something that's sitting right there. Why not do it? If I need a wrench, like for a miniature character, I'll go get a monkey wrench from the garage, stick it in there and pack some clay around it. Why sculpt a wrench? There's a wrench, you know? So.
Hey, this is John. I'm interrupting this episode. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep it brief, but I was going to ask you, would you please subscribe to The Breakthrough Creative? And would you please share this episode or any other episodes that you find helpful with the artists in your life? If it's beneficial to you, it's going to be beneficial to others. And I really appreciate you getting the word out. Thank you. Back to the show. How have you grown as an artist through the 2D and 3D animation years and then into toy design?
That's a really good question. So with animation, I think when I was doing my early animation, I did 2D stuff, and I don't think I was very good at it, just because and I always say that with my students, I don't say, it's not that you're not good at this, you just don't have the experience yet. It's just added. I'm not better than you at doing this. I've just been doing it a lot longer. And with anything, that's how it is. I really try to drum it into their heads that this is not a contest. The only person you have to impress is yourself. You know what I mean? And the more you do this thing, the better you're going to get at it. And that's really what's gone on. It's just, I've got so much more experience. At work, I realized that when I'm at work now, and there's a bunch of young designers behind me, that's who I was, those young guys, when I first started in toy design. And I realized, oh, we're the old guys now, and we've got all this experience. That's really strange. People are coming to me asking me advice, and I'm going, oh, but I actually know this stuff because I've been doing it for so long. So they come and ask. Somebody made a joke the other day that I should put up a sign that I'm, like a psychologist, because I'll come over and kind of talk about something that's going on, and then I help fix the problem, and then the next person comes by. So you end up, and I'm not saying this to be big-headed about it, but sometimes you find out that you're the smartest person in the room, at not at being smart, but at knowing what you do. You know what I mean? It's just this, you've compiled all this experience and knowledge, and you could just draw from it, you grab from it. And same thing with animation. I'm teaching animation, but I remember when I was young, I just didn't have the patience, and I would start with a character, with a position here and a position here, then I'd find the center, and then I'd keep on drawing it, and there was this kind of this slow, dull sort of moving through. And I didn't know about making something dynamic, and I didn't have the patience to sit there and analyze my own work and pick and choose the good stuff. And not everything is precious. You'll do a piece of art, throw it away. You could do more. You're not going to run out of ideas. You're not going to run out of art. It's not like there's this one well you go to. It's an endless supply. So everything's not precious. And when I was younger, I think I thought things were more precious. Now I've set my ego. Actually, I'll tell you a quick story. When we were sculpting with Dave, one of the first projects I worked on, Dave Link, it was this giant skull that was like this big, and he had sculpted one side, and he told me to sculpt the other side. It's kind of like the story you told earlier. And I showed up, and I started kind of whittling away. He goes, no. He grabbed the thing. He goes, feel free to just cut it and gouge it, and get, because he's a great sculptor. And he said, be bold, because you can always fix it. You can do that sort of thing. You can't make a mistake. You can always go back and fix it. And that was a great lesson, because you know what? I know I can fix this thing. So I just trudge forward. And there are so many people that tiptoe because they're worried about making mistakes. But you can undo things. Maybe it's not as easy to do on a piece of canvas, but with clay can be moved around, and animation you can reshoot. So I'm not afraid of making mistakes, because I don't mind redoing it, because until I'm happy with it. When I was younger, I don't think I knew that. or I didn't embrace that. And I think even further back, another sculptor that I knew, his name was Jim Lacey. I was sculpting this Planet of the Apes face, and I was also being very timid about it. He goes, no, do this, and he grabbed it and boldly carved into this thing. And then, you know, those slowly sink into my head about those experiences with people who know what they're doing and not afraid to do it, and they just do it. And I think I've become more like that as I go along. But even now, with doing stop motion, because of having to do a lot of stuff online, I'm starting to look at a lot of other people and how they do it. And then I start to compare that to how I do things and how I think about things. And I'm not afraid to keep learning. You know, I want to learn and do things every day.
Steal from the best, right?
Exactly. You know, there are some super, super talented young people. Just because they're younger, that doesn't bother me. I've learned from them. I learn from my students all the time. And that's why I love teaching. So, because you have this relationship with these young people and they have new ideas and you learn things and you get to share your stuff. So if anything, I think I have whittled my ego down to nothing to get in my way. You know what I mean? I've got enough ego to want to create things, but it's not in my way. I don't let it, I don't, you know, there's a saying in our family that care less about more. And there, so many people worry about so much and they let so much stuff frustrate them. But for me, don't worry about it. Who cares? Let's just make something. Let's work on something. And the other thing I've also noticed from being younger is that I trust people more. If I'm working on a project with somebody, I'll say, I know what this guy does. I'm going to say, could you do this portion of this project? And then I leave him alone because I trust that he can do it. They'll keep on coming back to me and saying, well, do you like this? I go, just do it. I asked you to do it because I knew you can do it. I can focus on this, you can do that, and then I just know it's going to get done. I think I've become better at organizing and, you know, what do they call that when you're doing a division of labor kind of a thing? I can't think
Managing, systemizing.
Exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I can gather a group of people up and say, you do this, 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 and this, and they can start doing it. As another quick story, if I'm rambling, stop me, please.
You're good. You're not rambling.
So my two younger girls went to Morton West High School, and they were part of the plays. And I got involved, as a lot of parents do, and I offered my artistic abilities to help design sets, make some puppets, that kind of thing. But they were doing this stage for a Dr. Seuss musical, and they were just running out of time. And I showed up one day, and the set was barely built. It was kind of like a loose structure, but there was no decorating, there was no design work. And they had tons of kids, but it was so hard to organize them. But the people involved are good friends. They just were doing so much they couldn't gather the idea in their head to make it happen. So I showed up, and they had a palette of, not a palette, but a broad range of colors. I said, okay, you guys come here, paint those stairs, this color, this color, this color, you guys do that. I just started throwing, I was grabbing actors, I was grabbing stage people, I was grabbing lighting people. I didn't care who they were, I just took them. And I said, you cut this out, glue this up there, screw that up there. And we started just throwing paint down, and it was so fun to do it. And I didn't realize that it was going on. I was just doing it. You know, you just see a problem and you start doing it. But my friends, Janine and Billy, they're basically the teachers involved. They came back and they started seeing all these. How are you getting these kids to do this? He's an actor. He's not. Why is he painting? It's like they were blown away. And it's because you see a problem and you see the project, you finish it in your head, and then you start breaking it down pieces and sending people out. And I don't think when I was younger I could do that. You know, I think I was a little bit more reserved. But as you get older and you start having a kind of a presence in the room a little bit, because I'm wider than I am tall, and I've got long hair and a gray beard, and people must think I know what I'm talking about.
Well,
But,
and frankly, I mean, all my experience with you has been you're fun. You're very like he's sharing a lot of stuff here. Dino is a funny guy. He's hysterical, and he's fun to be around as well. And I think when you kind of marry that to managing and getting stuff done, I don't see you as a taskmaster. I see you being serious. And it's like, hey, we got to get this stuff done. But I see you doing it in a way that is inviting and encouraging, and yeah, all
I
that
always
stuff.
say, "Hey, could you do me a favor?" I never say, "Hey, do this." It's like I'm doing you a favor. Sure, that's not, it's a phrase, and I think I probably got that from my dad. But he never said, "Hey, I need you to do this." I go over there and do this, do that. But I'd say, "Hey, could you do me a favor?" And it becomes this invitation. It's kind of a Huck Finn type of thing going on, and they just do it, and I joke around with them. I'm very immature in the way I think and the way I joke around. And I think from my experience with my family, and like my father was great with people. He would go into a room and kind of take it over. And he claimed to be a shy person, but I never noticed that. But you can go in a room and you could read the room. And I'm sure you do this too. You read the
I
room,
try to.
and then you just start to, you pick and choose. And if I'm looking at a group of people, I do that focus on one person, focus on another. So all of a sudden you've got them sucked in. With my stop motion, like I have a stop motion one class, and in the first class I sit there and I do my spiel, and it's my show and tell spiel, where I talk about animation and why I'm into it. I show puppets, but when I'm talking, I look them in the eye, and I it's like it's like I'm hypnotizing them, because I see them and I see their excitement, and I feed off their excitement, and I know the people who are getting excited about it, and I know that they're going to want to do stop motion and come back next week. And that's how you do everything. You just kind of get people. We're salesmen. I mean, that's the other thing, is that you're not what you're selling is you. And when you meet clients, you have to be this person who is on all the time. You know, and not everybody can do it. It's, you can get really nervous and you're a little shy about it, but you walk into a room and not be afraid to talk to everybody. So that's the way it has to be, really. And
Yeah.
that's, like I see some students who are very timid and they're kind of reserved. I go, that you're not going to get away with being quiet and being, like inside yourself. You have to come out and sell yourself.
Do you think people can learn that?
I think I think they can definitely learn it, but it's going to take experience to, not experience. It's going to take time to come out. Young people, I mean, I'm not sure about this latest generation, but some people avoid confrontation. Like there's a generation who just doesn't want to interact. There's lots of texting going on. There's not a lot of conversations going on. There's not a lot of one-on-one. And uh, I think you can learn it, but you have to really just set aside your fears. I don't get nervous at all, ever. I mean, I certainly get nervous if something terrible is going on, but if I'm gonna walk into a big room where I don't know anybody, I don't get afraid of that. I could just talk to anybody about anything. So it doesn't bother me, and maybe it's because I've set so much of that aside, and because of our business being creatives, you always have to be selling and you always have to be on. So I don't know if it's just me, but it's just how you have to be.
I think, I'm an extrovert, and I was kind of a performer, acting and whatnot in high school. But and the whole business side of things, I wasn't really interested in, but I knew I wanted to make a living as an artist. So I just had to go, okay, that's just part of the deal. And I know that as much as I didn't like the maybe administrative side of business, or even at times the sales or the difficult conversations you've got to have with people, I was so determined to make art and make a living as an artist that trumped everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that just became, it's like, all right, well, either I do this and I get to make art, or I don't, and I gotta go do something else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can imagine, if you want to work at a job where you go to work, do the same thing every day, and you get that paycheck, or you go to work every day and you don't know what you're going to do, and there's an exciting adventure and challenge every single day. However, then you still have to beg for cash. You have to do it. Like invoicing is a terrible thing. Like it's so different. Like you have this artistic person who wants to do all this stuff, and then you have this meek little accountant inside you that you have to summon like a demon. You got to draw a circle and light some candles and they had to come forth, so that you can just make a living. I've had freelance pay for so many things in my life that would have, like we're walking along, all of a sudden the furnace blows out. Okay. It just so happens I'm doing some freelance job. But guess what? That paid for this. This paid for that. That's how I look at it sometimes, is that because I have that full-time gig and I have money coming in, but there are some tight times in everybody's life, where you don't have a lot of extra cash.
And I think you nailed it when you said everybody. I think that there's some belief that I'm going to go work a regular job, and maybe less a belief than there was maybe when we were growing up, but I'm going to work a regular job and it's always going to be there. And that's not true. And you're going to have troubles anyway. But I'm sorry, I cut you off in the middle of a thought.
No, that's all right. But it's been fantastic that I can do these things because, it's paid for this, it paid for a new roof, it paid for that. And it's like the universe knows that look, there's a couple of grand coming. Let's see, where can we put that? Oh, let's put that on the roof. Let's put this in braces or whatever. So,
right.
You need to hustle. You need to keep moving and keep working at it. My stop motion students, I've done stop motion as a career, but I haven't done it for a long time. But my students who graduate from Columbia are going off to Portland and California, and they'll work on a project, but that project only lasts until it's over. Then they have to look for another thing. Then they're jobless. So it's a kind of a hybrid form of freelance where it's kind of like a mini job. And then there's desperation, where's everything, but it's a pretty tight community. And everybody knows about projects, and you start to get noticed as to when some of your specialties, and then you could get asked to be on these other productions. But again,
what's your best advice to those students, by the way, when they go out? You know full well what they're walking into, and they probably have an idea. How do you advise them?
Well, the first thing I do is, and some of the stuff I mentioned earlier, is that you have to be honest with yourself. You have to look at your work and say, does my work look like the work that's out there on the big screens or that are being shown in movies? If I had some work that I did early on, like you're at school for 4 years, the stuff that you did the first 2 years is probably going to not be very good. Throw it away. None of that stuff is precious. And the only reason that you're here at Columbia College is to create a portfolio to get you a job. Okay? Nothing is precious. Look at something with a really, really critical eye and ask people's advice and throw away the stuff that you don't want. That's not very good. And then just do stuff just for your portfolio. Okay. Because this is the only thing that's going to get you hired. You have to sell yourself with these visuals. I was, and I try to introduce them to some of my students who are already in the business because they give great advice. Like I found out that, that a show, usually you get a show reel, and it's about a minute long, and it's cut together and all this other stuff, and there's music. And I just found out recently from one of my students, a very talented kid named Dave Tuber, that they don't ever listen to the music. They turn the sound down because everybody thinks the music they chose is the best stuff ever. And then there's all these visuals. All they're doing is they're looking for the visual and looking for these moments of full animation that's character driven, from original characters. It's not the bouncing balls and it's not the stuff you do in school. It's your own stuff because they want to know who you are by looking at your own stuff. And that's the stuff that I give them. I give them that advice. I go, there are some people who want to do animation using action figures, and they want to do a nice parody similar to Robot Chicken. And I'm going, you're using somebody else's shtick, somebody else's character. How does that represent you? If you might have been drawing this character of yours in the margins of your paper since you were a kid, okay? And you keep on drawing him and you have some affinity for this character. Make that character brand spanking new, put him on your reel, bring him to life, do a sequence, and that's who you are. You have to show them who you are to get hired, you know what I mean? And also you have to know, you can't just know one thing. You have to know a bunch of things. You have to really go out there. YouTube is like a great place for like learning things. Like if you need to know a program like After Effects, go there and learn it. Even if you're not learning it in school, learn how to do all this stuff, because the more you know, the more of a Renaissance artist that you are, the better opportunities you're going to have, because people are looking for all types. So have a huge amount of things that you can do. And I also say this all the time is don't play to your strengths. You play to your weaknesses. This happens in my drawing, I mean, my animation class and my sculpting class. I can see by your drawing, you hate drawing hands, draw 100 hands. You hate drawing feet, draw 100 feet. I remember when I was a kid and I couldn't sculpt hands. So I took a shoebox, it was empty, and I took a big ball of clay. I would tear it off, make a hand, throw it in the box, make a hand, throw it in the box. I filled that shoebox, and by the time I was done, I had the confidence because I've done it so many times. I don't know why I even thought to do that. It's just like I was so frustrated with myself that I said, I'm gonna really learn this. So I say, if you have a weakness, you go and you strangle it and you make it your own until it's not a weakness anymore. You could keep on doing this beautiful stuff, but it's going to be the same. And if that's all you can do, then you're kind of stuck. So that's
What made you run to the pain? Because it's
uh,
painful to figure out what you don't know, right?
yeah, it really is. I think I'm just constantly challenging myself. Um, I'm outgoing guy, and I have lots of friends, but I do spend a lot of time by myself, and I'll sit there and I go, wow, that's really cool, but I don't think I could do that. I'm going to try to do that. I'm just going to try to make it happen. It's really just about challenging myself. There are people who are like, you know what, I'm going to run that marathon. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it faster than anybody else. And these are my marathons, creative marathons, where I'm just trying to beat my own record and try to do things like, like I love seeing puppets, Henson and, all that, like Dark Crystal. And I love those characters forever. And it fascinated me. So I started learning how to do puppets, make puppets and do puppetry. I'm not great at it, but it's still a challenge. And it's like my secret thing. Like I want to go off and make puppets and stuff. But I'm not going to do anything with it, but it's fun for me. It's a challenge, and I can do it. I did it now. So I don't know what makes me embrace it, but I don't like sports in any way whatsoever. It bores the heck out of me. But if I don't know how to make a blinking mechanism for a puppet, I will by the end of the week, and that's my challenge. That's my Olympics, you might say, that's how I kind of look at it, I guess.
How did you get into teaching?
Right when I was not right when all the stop motion and animation was drying up in the school. I'm sorry, in Chicago. The school, a guy named Barry Young, he was in charge of the animation department. He contacted me and just was curious if I'd like to teach stop motion. And I needed a job, and I never say no to work. That's really what it is. I've never said no to a job. Recently, I've done it a few times, but just because I'm so busy. But I said, okay, I'll be a teacher. And I accepted that job as a teacher. And then right after that, I got the job at BMT. So I started kind of at the same time, and I've been doing it ever since. But I look back, and I was such a horrible teacher back then. Remember, we were talking about what I've learned. I remember being in class and having all these students, and I just wasn't very good at teaching. I knew the information, and I knew how to tell them the information, but I don't think I was encouraging enough, and I also wouldn't shut up and let them talk, because half of what goes on in my class is like we'll be sitting there, and I'll just start asking them about their experience and about who they are, what they want to do, and so what my students will come in and they'll introduce themselves, but I always ask them what do they want to do, what kind of animation do they want to do, and I'll get to know them a little bit, and then I throw that back at them when we're having conversations. I have a student who really loves cats, and I always throw that back at them all the time. But I know what they want to do, and I know what kind of animation they want to do. And by knowing that, I can become a better teacher for them because I know what they want. And I feed off their enthusiasm. I just get more involved in who they are. And I didn't do that when I was younger. I was still kind of talking about myself, and I worked with a guy who worked on this, and I was too full of myself back then. And now I say this to them. I go, when they'll ask me a question, I'll say, ask me any question you want. I work for you. You hired me to teach you. And I'll say things like, it's okay that you didn't do this right, because if you knew how to do this, you wouldn't be here. So, I think they feel more comfortable with not being perfect at what they do, and they feel excited about trying it again and encouraged by the way I react. And I think I'm so much better at that than when I was back then. So, and now the animation department is getting bigger for stop motion. It used to be one class, now it's two. It might be going to 4 classes now.
Wow.
It just we're in a renaissance of stop motion because of Leica and all these other big companies that are doing things. There's a bunch of productions going on, but it went
And
from
it's a beautiful art because it is still very different than computer generated animation.
yeah, that's what drew it to me, is because it's so organic, because you're in there and you can actually see the artist. You can see the fingerprints, you can see the flutter, you know that somebody moved that character, and the character had to be made. And other kinds of animations, great, but there's it's homogenized. It's like I do a sketch and I do another one, and then they redraw it and tweak it and move it around. But with stop motion, it's there and you move it, and once you've moved it, what was there a minute ago is gone forever. And it's about feel, and it's really like a direct connection to the artist, and that's why I prefer it over other types of animation. And it's still magic to me. Like, I just animated a walk just last night or 2 nights ago, because you had to keep practicing with it, and I'm going to be doing some more animation for my film, and I want to make sure I just kind of hone my skills. And I was looking at it and going, oh, that's not bad. Oh, that could have been better. But it's still magical to me, because I spent 2 hours, and now this character walks across the screen, and it's still bringing this inanimate object to life, and it's still magic. So that's why I really like it.
And now, as opposed to Super 8, your video, right?
Yeah.
So you can look at it right away and go, oh,
Oh,
yeah, this is it.
The way we had to shoot it, we used to shoot it on 16, and we'd have to wait 2 weeks to get it back, and you hope it's good. But now, I've got a laptop in front of me. I can make my entire film on this laptop. Kids have it they're so lucky to have all this technology, and I love it. Like, I am not Amish in any way. I will grab it.
You're not too proud for buttons.
No.
Yeah.
Buttons, zippers, giving
Yeah.
Velcro.
Yeah.
But what you can do with this, like, that's why learning digital sculpting and learning editing, and I've edited forever, but it's sitting there cutting the paper, cutting and taping. But now it's just so amazing what you can do. So it's very exciting. I have some friends who've kind of shied away from modernizing their tool chest. It's all just another tool. It's just like,
right.
It's like you trying a different kind of paint, or these new brushes, or just
or Procreate. Procreate opposed to Adobe. Procreate has blown my mind. It is such a great program.
I know. I can't believe I'm looking at this and seeing what some of my students can do with it. And I'm going, this is incredible. And I just love it. And for somebody not to embrace that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. But again, it's just another tool. It's an airbrush. It's pouring a silicone part versus foam rubber. It's just why handcuff yourself to the past?
Yeah.
Keep everything you've learned from the past and use it to make wonderful things. But why not, join the rest of us,
So tell me about your film. Tell me about, like, what made it, why is now the time to make it? Because I don't think you've made a full-length film before, right?
So about 4 years ago, it was summertime, and my 2 younger kids were with us, and so was my brother Mark. And I said, hey, you know what? It's summer. We've got, it's really nice out. Who wants to make a film? I was trying to get the kids to do some stop motion. They were silent, but my brother goes, oh, I have a film. So we made this film. It was called Rot. And it was a short film. It was only about 2.5 minutes long, from an idea that he had. It's online. I can give you the link. But it was really fun to make. He drew the character. He kind of did all the art. Then I started building the sets with him, and I started building all the puppets. Everything was found objects. There was a few times I used some silicone and a little bit of foam, but it was all really found and just a lot of fun to make. And it was a really small set too. The set was probably like 6 feet wide and 2 feet deep, but we made it look really deep, and so it was a lot of fun. So we really didn't do too much with it. We just ended up producing it, but it was a lot of fun. We got some students involved. And then a couple of years go by, and my brother Mark says, you know what, I wrote this poem. I've got this story. It's called Fox in the Shadow. And we started bouncing ideas around. I was super excited about it. And the idea of the film is, I think it's so perfect for what's going on in the world right now, because Fox in the Shadow is about man versus nature. The fox represents nature and the world that we live on, and the shadow of man is us and how we treat the planet and how arrogant we are with its resources. So this film became a bigger deal. Rod was kind of fun. It was 2 minutes, that kind of thing. But this thing became a bigger deal because of what it was about. This is more festival worthy, and it's got a message that I think is very timely. And we started it, and then it fell apart because we weren't really happy with it. Some time went by, and then we breathed some new life into it. So it became even bigger, and then some other people were getting involved. I have a friend named Mark Protasevich who I went to high school with, and he's a writer, and he helped kind of write the script. He did write the script based on my brother's story, and he breathed some even more life into it. And there's just more people getting involved, and the art of it's really fun. I started making puppets before it was even finished, the idea. So I have like 2 versions of characters that I'm not using, and then a sketch that my youngest daughter did, Aria, of this character. We finally hit on this proportions that I really love. So it's really like, oh, we'll use some of what you just said. How about that? Let's do this. So it's really coming together as this cornucopia of creatives throwing ideas into it. And my brother Mark's 2D art is very also found objects sort of have a feel to it. Like he'll do paintings and that on a sheet of S&H green stamps or on old newsprint, and he'll paint on top of it. And so he uses a lot of old books and paper. So I started saying to him, we should make this world out of this paper, out of this old stuff. So everything you see is made from objects in the world, and that's part of it. It's almost like a recycled sort of set. Everything is made from objects that were being thrown away. So that even gives it another depth to it. So it's still growing. We're in the middle of getting some voice talent. I have a friend out in California, and she's recording the the Fox's voice right now to see if we like it. And anybody who gets involved gets excited about it, which is fun. So we're not in a hurry. That's the other thing, is that it's a long process. Even though we've worked on it for 2 years, we only have probably about a minute of animation, and it's all this little bits and stuff like that. Alan, my buddy Alan, is doing a beautiful set, a miniature set of this exterior bookstore. And that shot's probably going to be about 8 seconds long, but the model's going to take forever, but he's doing such a nice job with it. And the fact that we're not cheating, we're just kind of making it very handcrafted is so much fun. So
that's awesome. Where are you staging it?
So I have a 2.5 car garage in my backyard at the back of where we live. It's never had a car in it. It's always been a studio, and that's where I do a lot of my bigger sculptures. So there's the main set is out there, and then we have the party room, which you've been to certainly, where I have a mini set where I've been doing some green screen animation. So we're slow. I've got about 20 shots done, and I have some students who have done some shots for me. A very talented kid, I call him, very talented guy named Farhan, who was never even a student of mine, but his now wife was a student of mine, and he just hung around. He's a fantastic cinematographer, and then became a really, really good stop motion guy. And when he was living here, he shot a couple of sequences for us and did such a nice job, and his lighting is so great. And unfortunately, he's stuck in Portland now. I wish I could smuggle him back, because he was, he's making it look beautiful with what he can do. So I have students who are asking to help, and I'm asking people to work on it. So eventually it'll get done, but again, we're not in a hurry. So
I can't wait to see it. How long do you think it's going to be when it's done?
The animatic that we put together is about 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
So it's, it's 3 times as long as our first film. But again, I'm not even sure of that because it grows a little bit. There's sequences that we
Sure.
kind of have figured out, but now we have new ideas and they start to grow. So because there's nobody, we're not getting paid for any of this, I don't need to be in a hurry, we just have to be happy with it. So
Yeah. I can't wait to see it. So, as we're getting close to wrapping up, I'm just curious, what are your like income streams? Just artists need to have an awareness of their income streams. So how do you make your living?
okay, so I've got my day job, which is Big Monster Toys. So I get I get a regular paycheck, and that comes in, and depending how well I do, because in the toy industry, the way this works, in case nobody realizes this, that with we are a company that does ideas from the ground up. We come up with the idea, we create the prototype, then we pitch that prototype to companies like Mattel and Hasbro and Moose and all the Spin
You're
Master.
an invention group. You're an invention
Definitely, we're an
company.
invention group. There's probably about 25 or 27 of us, and nobody tells us what to do. We get sometimes we get lists of requests, but it's more like, hey, we need something with hair, we need something with a vehicle, but they don't really tell us what to make. So we come up with these ideas. So we had to come up with them from the ground up, and they go through a process where the partners look at them, we decide if we want to move forward with it, but we have no idea if they're going to sell. So we will spend as much time as it takes to make some of these projects, and we have to be really certain that we don't spend too much time on it. But we come up with the ideas. So once it's completed, then we pitch it to a big company. They might like it, they might hate it. About 95% of what we create never gets made. But in that 5% that does get made, they go to market, and depending how well they do in market, then we get a percentage of that. So if I have a really good year, like this year, I have a game called Uno Showdown that I did with a guy named Bill Paxton. But we did this project 8 years ago, and we've shown it in a couple different versions. And I love this game, and I've always just wanted somebody to make it so I could have a copy of it. But I would bring it up every once in a while. Hey, we should show Showdown again. So then 8 years go by. Now they've made it. And we made it originally for Uno, and then we made a couple of different versions of it. So now that's out. Now if that does really well, I might get a little extra in the pay packet around Christmas. Columbia College, I teach in the spring and in the fall. I don't teach during the summer because they have very few classes going. So I get paid by the credit hour. So I have three credit hour classes. So I work in the evenings for 3-hour classes, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I get to work at 6:30 in the morning, and then I get home at night at 10 o'clock. So I have 3 17-hour days where I'm just working, and that really kicks my backside. However, that money comes in really handy because I get paid through Columbia College. Then I have my freelance work, and except for this year, which has been really slow, I don't even really look for freelance because it's more of a windfall for me. But I will contact the foundry. I'll every once in a while send something to my client and see if they're interested in moving forward on a project. Or I will sometimes send out teasers and to the zoos and things like that. But I sometimes just get contacted. Like I've done it long enough where I have people who say, "Oh, I know somebody who does that," and they send it my way. So the windfall, as I call it, for my freelance comes from my main client, from the foundry, and then from extra things that happen every once in a while. I will sometimes pursue if I go, "Oh my gosh, we really need to pay for this," or I could really use some cash. Then I'll start hustling. But normally I'm so busy with everything else I'm doing, I don't need to do that. But it depends on what time of year it is. So there's always steady cash coming in. And I will, like as soon as I see some of it sinking down and I need a little bit of extra cash, I'll start to hustle and start making calls. So that's how I do it. Really.
Awesome. You know what? This question just popped to mind. I think this is important because I know how important your family is to you. And I know that you like to cook and you like to do stuff together.
Yeah.
How do you balance that out? How do you balance the work and the family life out?
So
Because you guys are really tight, even though
yeah,
you're really busy.
yeah. So before the pandemic, my family, my full family, we'd get together every Sunday. Years and years ago. I mean, this is Italian. It's an Italian thing. You get together on Sundays. Some people go to church. I don't. Uh, but we get together on Sundays out in Naperville at my sister's house. She's kind of the patriarch at the time, and we'll go there. And my brother Mark and I will do all the cooking. We've kind of taken the mantle that my father used to have, and we'll make sauce, we'll make meatballs, we'll cook pasta, we have salads, there's pre-dessert and there's post-dessert, and there's lots of food, and we spend the day together, and this is every single week. This was before the pandemic. Now we kind of have a Zoom call. However, with my core family, my daughters and myself, we still get together on Sundays, and I can't replace the time. I wouldn't want to replace the time that I spent a day cooking with my kids with any sort of vacation whatsoever. I really enjoy that. I think that cooking with family and learning how to cook and passing those recipes on is the cornerstone of my family and how I think everybody should be. When I talk to some of my students and they don't know how to cook, and I hear that their parents cook or their aunts cook, I go, you learn those recipes. You have to, that's your heritage right there. You got to learn how to do that. And some of them even listen. I'm shocked. But so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I barely see anybody because I come home, I'm exhausted. I have a little bit to eat and I go to bed. But then on Thursday, I'll cook. Sometimes Friday, like, today, yesterday I made some food. But their schedules are so wacky. We don't get to see each other a lot. But when there is a day off, then we hang out together and we have some fun. My daughter Juliana she got into Dungeons and Dragons, and so she'll run a dungeon and we'll play as a family, which is fun. But I try to spend as much time as I can, even though they're super busy and I'm super busy. But you have to make time for that. And two of my daughters still live at home, and some people would be going crazy with their kids there, but I love them being here. It's great. So it's better than a big empty house.
All right. So, my last question is just any parting words of wisdom, advice that maybe we haven't covered that
Don't
you
run
would
with
put out
scissors.
there for any creatives who want to make a living with their art?
Okay, don't run with scissors. Is that kind of thing?
That's a pretty good one, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Sheer intelligence, I would say.
Exactly. I think, I mean, I have said so much. I probably don't even remember half of what I said. But I'll tell you, if you really love doing something, do it every single day. Okay. And there's a lot of people who will sit there and just stare at the TV and watch a show and binge watch it. You could do other things while you're doing that because you're really not paying attention to the show. You've probably seen it already. Always have something to do with your hands. Always make something. And again, be honest with yourself. Look at yourself, challenge yourself, and work hard to keep going with that. And don't be afraid. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be tough. It's not easy to be an artist if that's all you're going to do. But you can do it if you believe in yourself and if you keep going. Give it a try, and don't give up. You just say, I just can't do it. You can't do it yet is really what you're saying. I can't do it yet is what you should keep on thinking. So keep on going with it, because I keep on hearing people, I could never do that, and I don't believe it. I don't think it's not like we have an extra bone in our hand to do art, or I think it's just if you really want to do it and you have a passion for it, you could do anything. Like I know I could probably do a push-up, but I'm not going to.
Right.
No, but I know I could do math and I know I could do science. It just doesn't interest me. But if you have an interest for something, focus your energy and time on that, and then you'll be able to do it. But again,
Totally.
yeah, you have to commit the time. There are so many people who don't have patience, and everything that I do takes so much time. Just a real quick story. There was a door in my dad's house, and this is years and years ago, and I put a handle on it for him because there's a kind of a door that's split like this, and I threw it up there really quick, and he looks over, he goes, that thing's crooked. Okay. He goes, all that stuff you do, all that sculpting you do, it's perfect. You throw that thing up, it's crooked. It's because I guess I didn't care. I guess it just didn't interest me. I did it for you, but I guess I would probably put it better. I'd probably get it better now, but you know what? I don't sweat everything. Don't worry so much. People worry and they just think about something so much, about every little detail. Stop. Just have some fun with it and keep trying and throw it away. Try again, throw it away, try it again until you get something you like. Yeah, I don't want to be somebody who just buys things, sees other people's stuff and buys it. Why can't you make it yourself? Why can't you make something that you're proud of?
Yeah.
Because you could be a maker and a giver too, for that matter. Then give away the stuff you make, sell it.
Where can people find you, man?
Well, I do have a website, but it's so old and rickety. But it's Dino Crisanti sculpture.com, but it's got all my old stuff. I can't even access it to take it down. I had to figure out how to do that. But I'm on Instagram as Dino Crisanti. I could be on Facebook as well, which I don't go there that often, but definitely on Instagram, Dino Crisanti. So that's
awesome.
Okay,
thanks,
great.
Man. Thanks for being my guest. You rock.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Dino, you rock, man. Thank you so much for sharing all of that insight. I really, really loved the moment in our interview where you shared about being a maker and not a taker. And then at some point you said you can be a maker and a giver. I like that you have a generous heart. And I really love the fact that rather than just being a consumer, which I think is so easy to do because we have so much social media around us, we have everything at our fingertips and our phones that we can stream, that can be fun, and in the right measure, it's all good, but it can rob us of the joy of creating, of making, of building things. And you know, I think that we can take a page from your book and really get to work. Like, be a maker and not a taker. If you find yourself, you're kind of stuck, you're just binging, or maybe you're not creating like you should be for your business, to grow your business or to grow a new skill set, I'd encourage you to put down whatever it is that you're doing and do something. Do something creative. Go make something that is going to add to your portfolio or help you to stand out or help you to get that next big client, or maybe to help you get that first big client. And the other thing that really stood out to me about Dino is, and I experienced this when I knew him way back when we were working on those projects simultaneously, is Dino was funny and he had a sarcastic wit. He still does, but he's kind. There's like this underlying kindness in him, and he's generous. And I really wish that I had him as a teacher when I was younger, so I could learn from someone like him. So I think that is something that we can all take from this interview with Dino. Is it's good and safe and a wonderful thing to do, to be kind to other people around your gifts and your art, and I mean in every walk of life. But if there's somebody who can use some encouragement and some bringing along, do whatever you can to help them out. It's just a really good way to be, and you'll probably get as much or more out of acting like that and helping someone else than even they might. So, with that being said, I hope that you have a great holiday, a great end of the year here, and get to work creating something so that you can make a living from your art. Whatever it is, do that very next thing. You're laying bricks, one brick at a time, one day at a time. You're adding to your arsenal of being able to serve out of your giftedness and making a living from your craft. All right, I'll see you next time. Cheers.